Breaking news, now that Trump's in office, I finally get to be progressive when it comes to LGBT issues again. Now, I'm going to save for another day the conversation on the initialism and how we should be using it. It's just funny to always be lumped in with trans people on their issues, even when one day I want it to just be the hot lesbians only club that I'm a part of, but that's a whole nother conversation. Today, I'm going to talk about trans women in women's sports, and I'm going to try to do so as fairly, thoroughly, and efficiently as possible. In case you missed it, Trump signed an executive order on February 5th excluding trans women from women's sports. Essentially, what it really does is says that any school that allows trans women to compete against men will lose its federal funding, and there's also language in there encouraging all sporting bodies to not let trans women in, including encouraging international bodies like the Olympic ones to stop doing that. Notably, Trump doesn't mention trans men in men's sports at all in his edict because, much as the Bible gives lesbianism a pass, I think we're all pretty much on the same page with the trans men thing. If a bunch of roided up females want to try their hand competing with males in sports, cool. They're at a disadvantage, so it's fine. Should I make that lesbian comparison? I don't know. It's funny to me. Hey, if women want to do their little stuff together, or if women want to play in sports. But for those of you who don't know, here are a list of advantages that trans women retain. If they've gone through male puberty, these are the advantages that they retain when it comes to just about any sport. These things are at play to varying degrees. And this is true even after many years of testosterone suppression and taking estrogen or titty skittles. Do you know they call their estrogen pills titty skittles? These are the advantages they retain. And of course, it all depends on the sport, how much these are factors. Some sports, well, we'll get to the exceptions because that is what I want to talk about next. I agree with Trump that it is generally unfair for trans women to compete against females in sports with these exceptions. In the case of the poor little nuggets that we stopped them from going through puberty. Whatever you think of puberty blocking, look, when it comes to the people we've already done this to, though, if they skipped their male puberty and then went straight on to cross-sex female hormones, then these people, and I will read a list here. Not only did they not masculinize, they also are going to have lower bone density than females, a weaker musculature, higher risk of blood clots, cholesterol imbalances, smaller hearts and lungs, impaired cognitive development, and of course, they're sterile. And also, they don't even grow a big dick. You know, they have still a child-sized dick. So when they want to try to make their pussy later, it's too small, and they got to start using all kinds of pieces, and that's gone really wrong. I'm not even going to tell you how wrong it's gone. They're improving technology all the time, but it's still, we've used these kids as guinea pigs and continue to. So if all that has happened to a kid and that poor bastard still wants to play volleyball, it's not unfair. Penis, though she was born with, let her play volleyball. If anything, she might get hurt because of what's happened to her. Another exception that I think should be made when it comes to excluding trans women from women's sports is that we should make an exception when the sport doesn't matter. Yes, if we're going for scholarships, if you're setting a record, if it's for a professional spot on a team, then those kind of high stakes things, that does matter. If it's like a bowling league, is bowling even something that men are better than women at? I mean, maybe, but isn't it something anyone can just master and get perfect scores at? I've never heard anyone bring up bowling in the trans sports debate. It's embarrassing if you're worried about it, I think. But yeah, I mean, neighborhood soccer leagues, for instance, my ex played soccer in some leagues around Austin, and some of them were co-ed. And what they would do is men's goals counted for 1 point, but women's goals counted for 2 points. So then you could have it where trans in either direction, their goals count for 1.5 points. I don't know. You could create your own system that makes sense without having to exclude people. And finally, there are a few sports in which males don't seem to have an advantage over females, and those are ultra distance running and ultra distance swimming. And then also the biathlon thing, these weirdos who did skiing and they're shooting. I don't know. It sounds like something that the people in like the Midsommar type people, they moved here, and I guess they did that with all that energy that they had. So that's good. So I think it's often unfair for females to have to compete against trans women in sports. But at the same time, I don't mind them being on our team when it comes to the battle of the sexes, especially if they cut their balls off. Some of them cut their balls off but keep their dick. What would be really horrifying is if someone cut their dick off but kept their balls. So I was watching the Super Bowl and this Nike ad came on and it made me think about this. I'll have you watch a little bit of it with me.
Settle this once and for all. Your best guy?
Girl.
Whatever. Versus our best guy. The Brad.
Oh, not the Brad. I'm Brad.
I can read.
So see, it was supposed to be their best guy versus her best girl. And so I found myself hoping, as much as I think it's unfair for women to have to compete against trans women in a lot of situations, I found myself hoping on this video that what was going to happen was that they were going to start panning through all of the women on her team, and that the last woman was going to be this 6'4", visibly trans chick who was just going to beat the shit out of Brad. So I'm not exactly a transphobe. I certainly don't hate trans people. I love many trans people, but I am a stickler for fairness, and I care a lot about female rights. As a female, because I'm a female who doesn't even feel like a woman, but if I was going to play sports, it would be on the women's one. We meant male and female sports. Then this whole gender conversation got confused. In case you missed it, a week after the sports executive order, Trump made another move on the Title IX front where he rescinded the guidance that Biden's administration had put into place about Title IX. Biden had tried to say, hey, NIL payments or name, image, and likeness payments need to be equitable between male and female athletes. So MSNBC's cute little article here tries to make it seem like, oh, Trump says he cares about women, but he doesn't really, which, be that as it may. I don't know that I feel like it makes sense for women to get the same amount of money that men do in sports in general, much less colleges can't tell Nike and Aussie bums and your local bar and grill to pay women as much as they're paying men to be sponsors of them. The whole thing seems very strange to me. So I think where we've come to is it's finally time to start being honest about men's versus women's sports. Okay, I've watched this play out because for the last 50 years, the radical feminists have they really thought that men and women were basically the same. We had different genitals. I mean, they used to agree to that. We had different genitals, but pretty much everything else that was different about us was just socialization. It was just because we were giving girls one treatment and boys another treatment, and that over time, as we started to treat boys and girls the same, all of the sex differences would wash out. And it's somewhat understandable that they thought that in the 60s because girls and boys were treated so differently. But they were still teaching that to me when I was going to college in the late 2000s. And I was going this is crazy. This isn't true. I can see with my own eyes how much stronger men are than women. And I remember, in fact, that it was in 2012 when the first person that I was friends with who identified as non-binary, suddenly they were they, and they had given me a book on sports, on women in sports, before they'd gone non-binary. They gave me a book on women in sports that it was all basically about how, like, look, men used to be 200 times stronger than women, and now they're only 100 times stronger. So give us a couple years and we'll be just as strong as men. That was essentially the argument. But what's so funny now, it didn't take long for the trickle of them. You know, the numbers have been growing, but it didn't take long for trans women to start creating new records, beating women's records, taking women's scholarships, women's places on the podiums. Now the radical feminists are the ones yelling from the rooftop, men are stronger than women. Men are stronger than we are. They're faster than we are. And they're kind of like better than we are at a lot of things. In fact, we don't even want to play chess against them. It's funny and it's embarrassing. I wish that the radical feminists had never taken the position that women are as strong as men, because it's like, please don't rest our worth, our self-esteem, our value on that. Men and women are different. We have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's okay. We don't need to pretend that we have the same strengths as men. Men are dumb and strong. Women are weak and wise. I mean, okay. But that's the thing. And by the way, it is true. Men are better at chess than women. Men are even better at darts than women. Males versus females, I should say. But here's the thing. When we say men are better than women, or strong, or smarter than women, stronger than women, all of these things, most of those distributions happen probably because of what we call the greater male variability hypothesis, which is that men tend to be represented at either end of the spectrum when it comes to all these traits. Like, the smartest people on the planet are men, but so are the dumbest people. Just like most billionaires are men, most homeless people are men. And in fact, on average, women tend to be as good and sometimes even a little better than men on all kinds of these things. But that's how it works. So that's why when we're at the extremes, when we're at the competitive places, when we're talking about creating new records for what females can do, that's when it becomes unfair for males, transitioned or not, to be competing in the female category. That's why it doesn't really matter at lower ends of things, but how to work that out doesn't really make sense to me. I think we are going to have a separate trans league. So now that even the radical feminists can see that men are better than women at sports, can we all just admit that maybe men are always going to have better ratings than women?
I'm not sure that the ratings for the WNBA are going to be where we need them to be until there really are trannies dunking on dykes out there. So let's get these women paid. That's when I'll start watching. I'm not watching yet.
And if that makes you mad, or you just want women's sports to make more money, then watch it more. You can't have the government just dictate that women and men make the same amount of money for things. Not unless we have an authoritarian communist state anyway, which I know some of you want. But if you really want this, you need to go watch women's sports. You need to call up your local sports bar and ask them if they will play a women's game. And then you need to bring a whole posse of friends out there, start a meetup group, and make sure everyone's buying beers and nachos and tipping. And then you can get some women's sports going. Also, you can visit these. If you live in any of these cities, we now have women's only sports bars. In Portland, famously, we have Seattle, Minneapolis, Long Beach, Denver. Soon, Austin is going to get the 1972 Women's Sports Pub. Can't wait. I'm gonna go to that. It'll essentially be our lesbian club. I think Ricky's in San Francisco expected to open. So this is a growing movement And if you're in one of these gay cities, you can go to these de facto lesbian bars, which is cool. Please don't not support them because we don't want this to happen. We're embarrassing ourselves. We go, hey, can you guys treat us equally? And then we don't go to the sports bar. We don't go support. So if you want women's sports to thrive, you got to go to the games. You got to go to the sports bars. You got to buy the jerseys. That's how it works. I don't think we can expect government to tell the colleges to tell Nike they got to give the same amount of money to women as they do to men. I just don't think that's a huge Trump rolling back something Biden said. I'm just like, let's stop worrying too much about that. There are plenty of things to be worried about Trump for, but the endless going back and forth on what Title IX does or doesn't mean, I don't think is one of our hills that we really should be caring about too much less dying on. So, in the spirit of women needing to make a decision, what do we care about more? Do we care about fairness and safety, or do we want to make money and have high ratings? I will leave you with a few more moments from my Ellen DeGenderless special, and I will also link to that in the show notes so that you can watch the whole thing. Before I sign off and leave you with those clips, I do just want to ask you, please like, comment, subscribe, send this to a friend. Also in the show notes, I'll link this, but you can go to patreon.com/AINorman where you can support me for just $1 a month. That's all I'm asking for. Just took this from a friend of mine who's actually British and is asking for €1 a month, which is significantly more. So for just $1 a month, you can support me and help me keep the lights on. You can see that one just turned off. I have decided I want to start getting off of social medias. This will be on YouTube, and I'll probably keep doing YouTube at least for a while because I like this place best, despite many of you being awful. But I do like this place best. I like the longer form stuff, but I don't want to be feeling like I have to keep trying to build a following on Instagram and TikTok and doing a little bit of OnlyFans and a little Substack. I'm never naked on there. And they've got us to do comedy on OnlyFans. Anyway, but I've been so spread out of doing all of this and occasionally a tweet, and I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be spending too much time on those things. I don't want to be in the social media rat race. I don't want to be trying to figure out how to suck the algorithmic god's dicks. So I want out of that. And all I ask is just $1 a month for me. There are higher tiers if you want to, but $1 gets you everything that. I guess I have it so that if you pay me $100 a month, I'll be your friend or something. But the $1 a month is all I ask because that way it's hassle-free. You can do it and forget about it. If you want to get the return from it, I am going to be posting content there. And that's how you can keep up with me. I'm going to post my tour dates and everything else there. But if you don't want to and you just want to support my comedy and podcasting endeavors and making it so that I don't have to sell out or do things I don't want to do, send feet pics to men or whatever, then just send me the $1 and don't worry about it. But I hope you do engage with me there. I want to create a really cool community of people who want to have cool, interesting conversations about difficult topics and sometimes just fun topics. So that's the plan. Patreon.com/AINorman. And now enjoy my thoughts on transport. There's a lot of thoughts on transports in this special. Go watch the whole thing, but here's some moments. I am one of those people who thinks that we should do a separate translate. Okay? Yeah. By which I mean we do trans men on testosterone versus trans women on estrogen and testosterone blockers. Right? Let's watch that battle of the sexes play out. We don't even know who'd win. Let's stop squabbling and find out. The other thing we could do is and maybe the best plan that we could do is a separate translate, but it's not just a translate. It's trans men and trans women, but also a lot of intersex conditions will go in there. Also some of the little gay boys and big old lesbians, just kind of all the medium people. And here's why I think that's a good idea. We might actually watch that. Queers versus intersex and shit. We might watch that. Everyone will continue to not watch women's sports at all. But they'll be safe. But we might take some of the market share away from the boys.